Boom, we are live, and we are going to be talking about something that is rampant across the YouTube channels right now, which is YouTube channels are getting hit left, right, and center. Now, at first it looked like it was a crypto-centric ban, but as I started to dive deeper, I noticed that these changes were initially rolled out around December 11th. And we'll dive in, we'll take a little bit closer of a look at exactly what those guidelines mean, but this is something I've been talking about since August. I had noticed that there were changes in the policy that around the Child Protection Act, and the FCC and the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission and Federal Communications Commission, are obviously, I guess, have inserted themselves into the communications with YouTube and globally with the UK about harmful, abusive, or negative content that may be deemed potentially dangerous for children to view. And this is important. We see things like the Tide Pod Challenge and all this nonsense where children were doing things that were probably pretty detrimental to their health based off of videos that they had watched on YouTube or these other platforms. So it's likely it's not just YouTube that will see these changes in the future, but other channels as well. And although I'm sure all the crypto content creators would love to think that it's just focused on, oh, because Bitcoin is like the coolest thing, it's not. It actually has almost solely to do with the child protection laws, and there's a lot to dig into here. One of the first things I want to mention, and before we get into the articles and all the serious like nitty-gritties of the legal content, is that if you don't have an age attached to your account now, Google is likely going to assume that you are a child because they don't want the responsibility for getting something wrong. And this is a hugely detrimental factor because you have to remember most of the crypto niche are generally probably anarchists or somewhat of a free market libertarian who are concerned about privacy laws in the first place for themselves as individuals, would not attach a birthday to their account at all, let alone the proper one. And this is important to remember is because YouTube is going to do everything that they possibly can to mitigate the risk. Now, some of the more concerning aspects here actually start to take place when we dive in. So I'm gonna read to you guys here a little bit. It says YouTube has no obligation to host anyone's video. So right now we're looking at The Verge, and so YouTube is rolling out updated terms and services on December 10th, and new lines acts as a reminder the company does not have to keep any video up that they do not want to. YouTube is actually under no obligation to serve or host your content, the new terms of privacy and policy read. It's another way of saying just because YouTube is a relatively open platform, it doesn't mean that the company is required to keep any videos up. YouTube has faced criticism from all sides over its video removal process. Some critics argue that YouTube could do more to take down videos that butt up against the company's rules but don't outright violate them. Others argue that YouTube ought to be fully open platform and shouldn't control what remains and what doesn't at all. Executives have long defined the platform as a champion of free speech, but have started to clamp down on these types of videos that they end up circulating. Now, the company updates to the terms of service all the time, and YouTube is doing its third changes in 2019 alone. Again, the first ones came out in August, and that's when I started to notice because I like to read this nitty-gritty legal stuff that starts to come out, and that's what we're going to get into here. So YouTube's third changes, the seemingly updates coincide with the updates that YouTube will make in accordance with the new FTC or the Federal Trade Commission guidelines for YouTube. Although YouTube representative denies that these changes were made because of the FTC ruling, it is very likely the case that they are trying to keep up with the laws in these countries. So specifically, many of these updates around who's using the platform and the protection for children. In September, the Federal Trade Commission issued a $170 million fine against Google for alleged violations of the Online Privacy Protection Act, known as COPPA. YouTube also agreed to make changes to further protect the child privacy laws again and comply with the law. So these terms of service now come with a new updated section on parental responsibility when children use the platform, and have clearly stated the age requirements per country for using YouTube. This also includes a notice stating that if you are a minor in any country, you must always have your parent or guardian's permission before using the platform or service. So YouTube's terms have changed in order to make it easier to read and ensure that they're up to date. That's what we're finding out now. So we're not changing the way they work on products, they say, but how they collect and process data on the settings is extremely important to YouTube because of these new laws. And again, I had mentioned this many times over, I've had these in our conversations since August. It's nothing new, but now we're seeing that slow rollout, right? We saw it with Alex Jones, these what might be considered abusive or harmful content to a younger mind. Again, nothing against free speech here. It is the understanding that generally speaking on a television show, they would put the late night cartoons, the ones that would be potentially ridiculously hard to digest for a younger mind. Again, the difficulty here is you have a large corporation now dealing with multiple governments around the world and who all have completely different laws. Because of this, you're likely going to see a degradation in the platform's ability to do something about it because they're held responsible for these types of ideas. Now, recently we actually saw Jack Dorsey come out and talk about this type of idea where the interests of Twitter finding its own way to distribute content is important because then Twitter wouldn't be responsible, nor would they be reliable for the content that was being produced on its platform. So something that we see the decentralized and blockchain world being able to offer this space very inherently. YouTube could migrate and mitigate some of these problems by offering their protocol, basically like an open source protocol, which they could run over top of. They'd still be responsible for video hosting. Again, any platform is going to run into this problem because video hosting is fucking expensive. Anyone's going to run into that. I remember about a month ago, we had to click, we are not a content creator for children. Very specifically, none at all, because I already do not appeal to anyone 35 and under. Why the hell would I think that I'm all of a sudden going to start to appeal to a younger demographic? That would just be ridiculous. So again, these YouTube abilities to terminate your access to your Google's accounts are all part of the service that YouTube believes is in its discretion to do so. So I'm going to open up another terms of service page here now, which is really important. This is actually the termination of your account. It says termination and suspensions by YouTube for cause. YouTube may suspend or terminate your access to your Google account, your Google any other Google services. If you are materially or repeatedly in breach of this agreement, we are required to do so to comply with a legal requirement, or also court orders can do so. We believe that there has been conduct that could create liability to harm or others. And this is important. We've seen that the Tide Pod Challenge was a prime example of the stupidity that might be deemed abusive. Now there are a myriad of other ways. What about the people that talk about ayahuasca and their experiences with psychedelic plants that have, I mean, just a few years ago, all the FDA and the trade, all of the stupid governments thought that these things were bad for you, but they've proven time and time again that they're actually medically the most reliable source of fixing a lot of problems that our society has across the board. So what happens when the laws change after you've already banned someone? It's a very, very difficult conversation that YouTube has got itself into now, and this is likely the death of the platform. A slow one at that, but likely the death of the platform. Mitigating the risks by going onto platforms like Uptrend, Steemit, all these are going to be extremely important. Now I do want to take a look finally at a few of the comments here. Now again, just to go back over this, Google paid a $170 million fine for child privacy violations from YouTube's channel. And again, this was important because this was kind of the setting stone in everything else that went out. Now, if we roll over here, we're seeing all of our friends get this hit because we are considered what might be a regulated good in the crypto space. Again, because you might have children watching. There's a lot of people that produce content. Chris Dunn was one of the channels, and I looked at his channel. It says, how to make $75,000 as a teenager. Well, what the are you doing? Like, this is in direct conflict to what YouTube said they were going to be aiming at. Anything that has teenager and potentially money-making ideas where they could lose money is going to be a very dangerous sentiment. Now, again, if we look here, we see box mining. So apparently I got a content strike about crypto censorship in South Korea. He's going to start appealing it now. Omar Baum from Crypto News, all good friends of ours. Joey Rocket, who I do not know. I saw Chris Rice Crypto. Heidi from or Blockchain Chick on Twitter, or Crypto Tips, also got hit. But interestingly enough, again, here is a channel about vaporizers who got hit as well. And this means that the violation of community guidelines is not just to the regulated goods in crypto space. And that's what's important about this conversation, is understanding that YouTube is rolling out these changes for every channel across the platform. It's not just crypto. So although we would probably like to assume we're this cool thing and they want to smash us down because first they fight you, this has nothing to do with Bitcoin. This has everything to do with with COPPA, the Child Protection Act, as well as the child privacy laws that the FTC has recently changed. And that's what I wanted to make this video today, is because I don't like to fall into conspiracies, but it's important to remember that this is not just happening to the crypto space. This is YouTube global community guidelines. Again, here you can see Chris Dunn just removed crypto videos for citing harmful, dangerous content, sale of regulated goods. And again, remembering that selling information, which is kind of what you're doing, if you're getting paid in advertisements and the children are digesting it, you're selling information to children. And if it's actually not commercially viable, YouTube can just go and wipe you off the platform. Now again, I don't see how blockchain could solve this other than being able to keep a metadata record. Again, hosting these videos is super fucking expensive. It's not like they can just take over. Most of these smaller platforms haven't run into the user uptick where they'd be like, oh my God, how many new people producing how much new content over how long of a period of time would actually, I guess, trigger those flags. And so I'm not trying to talk badly about this sector, because again, people like CryptoLark, these are my best friends whose videos are getting pulled and flagged right now. The important part here is to remember that this is happening on YouTube on a global scale because of the FTC and child privacy laws. And if you want to stay somewhat relevant on this channel, at least for the next little while, you're going to have to keep that in mind. Now again, the important part here is to look at alternatives. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're a fan of this channel, please go to our arcanebear.com, sign up for our private newsletter, sign up for our free newsletter, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever it might be, because eventually these discrepancies in the way people, and we've been delivered content and delivering content for the last little while, is going to be put on the chopping block. And whether we like it or not, this was inevitable. This was inevitable because there have been videos that are extremely detrimental to children. And that's understandable. I can see why YouTube would do this. It's upsetting. It's upsetting to see all my friends get hit. Pray that we don't get hit either. I mean, we've got videos about ayahuasca, about DMT. It's all sorts of crazy on the Arcane Bear channel. So I definitely understand the feeling, but I also know why YouTube is doing this. It makes sense for them. They're under the chopping block right now by governments around the world. So anyways, remember guys, if you like this content, please give us those thumbs up. If you're new to the Arcane Bear family, subscribe. But remember to check us out everywhere else on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Go to our website, sign up for our free newsletter. We will never be taken off the internet. Sign up for our paid newsletter if you happen to be brave and adventurous. But most importantly guys, the point of this whole video is to remind everyone that even though we might feel like we're being singled out in the crypto community, we are not. Since December 10th, these child protection privacy laws have gone into effect, and they are going to hit every content creator that has questionable content and that is not, more importantly, considered commercially viable for the channel. Anyways, this is Teal with the Arcane Bear. I'm signing off for the rest of the day. Thank you guys for always showing up, allowing me to pursue the interests of deeper understanding of what's actually taking place here. It is important to remember to do your homework, ladies and gentlemen.